uh, last time we spoke, everything went very well. My mindfulness was strong. I remembered everything I wanted to remember. And then, as it usually happens, a day or two goes by, and it seems that I'm just things starts bubbling up. Like
Okay.
everything starts to suck, and some anxious feeling coming from nowhere. Like
All right. And what you're saying is that you're recognizing that things kind of go on a cycle,
2 weeks.
about a 2 week cycle, kind
It's
of
been
an on and an off. So you could say a full cycle of 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off is about a month or so. Would you say that that was possible?
yeah. I last spoke to you about a week and a half ago.
Uh huh.
I was what I would call at my best practice,
All
and
right. I
and
I
now
think that what you're hinting at now is the fact that human beings are on a cycle that has been well known, well established, well practiced, and put actually into the way that we relate each other for many, many centuries, but modern man has somehow forgotten all about that. But that the moon and other things have effects upon humans. For instance, the women have the monthly period. Guess what? Men do too.
so I'm on my period.
Yes, that's exactly right. And it's excellent that you're beginning to understand that these things go on a cycle and that you'll eventually start to recognize how timely that cycle is. But in the beginning, because of the actual recognition and understanding of the cycle is new to you, there will be some confusion, but eventually you'll be able to figure it out. But eventually, after that, it won't matter anymore. Because what's important that whatever it is that's coming up can be dealt with.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find some way uh, to do this effectively
All
because
right, I'll talk to you about that in just a moment. But first thing we have to do is to straighten out the idea that that's very, very common in the West and is probably the most common in Germany and in that area of Europe. And that is that somehow things should be improving, that my practice, my meditation practice should be improving
oh no, I'm not worried about that.
rather
I'm
than recognizing that no, everything is on a cycle. Things go up, things go down, that everything is anicca, and that your job is to start to deal with whatever it is that's happening right now. And the best way to deal with whatever is happening right now is with information that's current and present, and that we don't reminisce about the past because it's the past, staying out of the past. In fact, just as a brief introduction, I've got a friend, Robert, and who lives in Thailand. He's lived here for years. He's very, very excellent in the Thai language, so that he reads and writes contracts and does work like this. And that he's currently working on a very important work by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, which is actually a long treatise on the Anapanasati Sutta. But what the book is beginning to point out, because Robert's going to be translating this, and he recognizes that the original translator who did part of the book that was published was missing out on a lot of nuances of the Thai language. And that basically the Anapanasati Sutta itself is a treatise on the Paticca Samupada, which is the way the mind works. And this is especially true in an area of the Anapanasati Sutta that I have not paid that close attention to, but it's the relationship, that the Anapanasati Sutta is set between the body, number one, feelings, number two, mind, number three, and then the mind objects, number four. You've heard me talk about that. That's the basic way of looking at it. In the old context, it was earth, water, fire, and air, the four basic elements. So Buddha broke the body into these four basic elements. And then he arranged the Anapanasati Sutta around the Satipatthana and talks about it very definitely in the sense that I teach the Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana. And we practice the Satipatthana for the fulfillment of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Now, something funny is going on because this is a point when it looks like it is changing between the Anapanasati Sutta and the actual Satipatthana Sutta, because there it's talking about at this stage that we would deal with the Eightfold Noble Path. But in fact, the fulfillment of the factors of enlightenment are actually the fulfillment itself of the Eightfold Noble Path. And it's just a restatement of that. And so when we understand it that way, we can see how interrelated and interconnected all of this stuff is. And then we begin to look back at the Anapanasati Sutta and look at the relationship between the body and, the feelings and the mind at the Anapanasati level of 6, 7, and 8 are the because they're in what's called tetrads. 4 for the body, 4 Anapanasati for the feelings, 4 Anapanasati for the mind, and 4 Anapanasati for the mind's objects. Okay, so the 4 Satipatthana then give 16 stages or 16 steps of Anapanasati, but they are not to be practiced in a particular order. They're to be practiced as they're experienced. And so this stuff that's coming up for you now, Ronny, I want you to begin to look at that stuff in relationship to these factors of the Anapanasati Sutta, which fit so deeply into the actual teaching of what's called Paticcia Samupada, which the words themselves mean basically a cause and effect relationship. That's what the word Paticca Samupada means. Without this, there could truly not be that. And so these things happen one after another. It's also wrapped up with words we call like nutriment, because if something gets nutriment, then it'll have a different quality than if it does not have that nutriment. So you can see that nutriment then would be an old style way of looking at the word cause. For instance, you eat a meal and then you're nourished. So the food was nutriment. You eat that food and you get a good result. That's what we're talking about, a cause-effect relationship. Some cause-effect relationships happen at much higher than the speed of light. In fact, there is some kind of cause-effect relationship that causes light itself to happen. And so there's something left in there that they haven't figured out, but they're beginning to talk about it in the sense of causality. That why does a wave wave? Why does it stop here and then go back? Why doesn't it, once the wave starts going that direction, why doesn't it just keep going that direction? Something's in there, you see, that we haven't figured out quite yet. But what the Buddha did was he figured it out enough so that we could apply this basic possibility of physics to understand that things happen in a sequence of events almost algorithmically. I use that word for Willy because he knows what I'm talking about.
A deterministic
Yes,
algorithm.
and they determine an algorithm is a step-by-step sequence of events that when each step is properly processed, then the algorithm will give the desired results, what the algorithm was designed for. Okay. Now the shorthand version of it is that an algorithm is a step-by-step sequence of events that's guaranteed to give the desired results. Now, in this sense, the guarantor is the computer. But in our case with the Dhamma, that guarantor is the mind itself in this relationship with the feelings. That the feelings and the mind are working together. That what our job to do is basically is to pull that stuff apart, take a good close look at it like a Chinese box puzzle that we take apart. But when we're taking it apart, we kind of remember how we took it apart so that when we put it back together again, it goes back correctly. But now we understand the full mechanism and operation of the mind. And that's what you're going to start to apply to see how, why, and what this stuff is that comes up. That is for you seems to be, and for vast numbers of people. Not everybody have that. In fact, for instance, living in a big city like New York, those kind of feelings can be disrupted from that cycle because they hand them randomly based upon events that happen all over the place in that city. But when you're not close so much to a city, then we begin tuned to the way that nature is operating. And nature is operating on the most important cycle that's subtle is the moonly cycle.
So there's less external noise.
Exactly. And so when we settle in to a monthly cycle. And the Buddhist monks all met on a monthly cycle. That they were dispersed throughout the month, but at that time of month, at the full moon, they would all come together. Here on this islet, they still have a full moon party, but that's from a different tradition.
So the mission is to kind of reverse engineer the algorithm to be able to modify it to produce my desired result.
So. That in fact, that's exactly the most important quality and value of the Dhamma itself. You just nailed it. Why and what is the Buddha's contribution to humanity that gives him such a high status? The answer is that he was able to take the mind and the way that it works and put it into a context so that people could understand that, so that they could begin to see the way their own mind worked, so that they could make the necessary changes in that process so that they never come to a state of suffering. Now, a lot of the things that people don't understand, and this is kind of amusing, so I'll talk about it kind of on a surface level. There is a kind of a 4-quadrant, like a window that has 4 panes. And in the middle, we have a line, and in the middle, up and down, we have a line. So in each one of these quadrants, let's look at the top quadrant versus the bottom quadrant. The bottom quadrant would be, no matter what happens, I don't like it. And then the top quadrant would be, no matter what happens, I like it. This is merely a feeling level. I like it, I don't like it. In fact, the whole quality of feeling is one of the things the Buddha really wants his students to get in touch with. If you can understand what you feel and how you feel every moment that you do recognize your feeling, then you'll be able to do something about it. But if you don't know how you feel, then you're squandering an opportunity to stay out of trouble. And that trouble is feeling bad. Okay, exactly. All right, so feeling bad is basically an emotion. But when I say bad feeling, or feeling that is an unpleasant feeling, we're talking about a very, very subtle thing that happens ignorantly on its way to bad feelings. That in fact, in the English language, we would use bad feelings at the level of what is called tanha. And tanha is the actual grasping that they talk about, the clinging itself. When we use the word grasping, we're actually talking about grasping at, which is basically what the mind is that it wants something. And that in the Anapanasati Sutta, the first thing that we do within the mind quality is to begin to experience the mind. And that at that level, it's not dissected as to what actually the mind means. But later, when we look at Paticcia Samupada, we can recognize, and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, in this book that Robert's translating, is pointing out these various things that the Buddha was actually mentioning in shorthand. Now, where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa got that stuff was partially from the Abhidhamma and partially from the suttas. But everything that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has ever said is always findable. You can find it back in the suttas, because that was where he got his stuff, and that was why it was so brilliant, was that he was actually able, in many ways, to put kind of things back together again the way that it was kind of understood in the time of the Buddha. So this quality of mind, this step number, what we call 9 in this list, which is the actual first thing we do with the mind, is begin to experience it. The first thing that you're going to do in meditation that is given as a task is to recognize that the mind has wandered away from the breath. All right, this is the very, very first experience of the mind, is that it's not me. It does whatever on its own. It is something that is not right now very able to be controlled. And that's the first thing that we recognize it. But we also recognize that because of that being true, that is in fact very malleable and can be controlled if we take the time to do that. It's almost like animal training. Guess who the animal is? And guess who the trainer is? Well, in this regard, you could say that the trainer is the frontal cortex, the more human part. And that which needs to be trained is the more reptilian brain, that is our more animal. It's the way, that's where these feelings come from. So if we begin to recognize this, when you get into the point of being able to see feelings as they arise, then you can do something about them from this aspect of wisdom that is your higher mind. That in fact, I was quite amused and surprised when this quality of mind was listed by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa as manut, because manut is actually a word for human in Thai language. And what he's actually talking about is the human part of the mind has to take over and take control over our more basic animalistic, reptilian, all of those kind of parts of the mind. But normally, that reptilian mind has kept you alive your whole life. That's what works. That's the automatic pilot. That's your baseline. That's what keeps you alive at night, because when you're asleep, you don't remember to breathe. However, this critter that we have is extraordinarily conservative. It's very afraid oriented. Deep, deep inside every human being's brain is a Republican Donald Trump supporter. It is our deepest, deepest programming that is based in fear. And those humans that actually are Donald Donald Trump supporters, allow that part of their brain to be in charge without even bothered to thinking. They just automatically are afraid. And they will blame because humans are naturally tribalistic. Instead of saying, oh, it's the guy that my uncle that I used to know, but now he's a gangster and he's robbing everybody in the village, but at least he's white. That really the problem in town is all of the blacks on the other side of town. If we could get rid of them, then it wouldn't matter if my cousin was a creep or not. You see, this is how the human mind works because of our old instinctual ways. And so the higher brain needs to not only come out of that kind of politics, but all of politics is based upon that. That the very highest mind is not going to have much of anything to do with politics other than be mused by it, because the only other option is to be sucked into it so that you can wind up every time one group goes up and another group goes down, you feel bad. And here you are giving your emotions to a political party so that the vagaries of their existence is now the vagaries of your own heart. And you don't want that. You want to be completely separated from any political group.
Yeah, interesting enough, 4 years ago, before I began seriously meditating, I think I would fall in the pretty right political wing, and now I think I would be more extreme left. Very kind of pro-socialistic.
Well, that's the natural inclination of the mind as it matures.
Yeah,
as it matures, it goes very far left. But after it matures to a point of saying, wait a minute, the far left is also hot and dangerous. And then, in fact, we can go all back and forth on that conservative, moderate, centrist, far left, or alt-right, whatever. And any place on that continuum is painful. There is not one place on that line for Dhamma dudes.
No, it's politics.
It's all politics.
But the base philosophy, I think, is the greater good for all people.
That's right.
Not just the single percent on the top.
Well, if you think about it like that, it's all about greed.
Yeah.
And greed is individual. That's all about selfishness rather than community. When people will begin to think more of community, which is what you're doing, you're opening it up. And the further you open up so that you accept everybody, then one of the things that you have to accept is everybody's out there in politics and they suffer for it, but you don't have to. To let the world be the world.
Yeah.
Willy's thinking right now of that drawing that I keep sending some of the students, and that is the drawing that is, oh, boundless joy to find at last there is no happiness in the world. This is a drawing that's in the spiritual theater at Wat Suan Mok, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's home Wat. Oh, boundless joy to find at last there is no happiness in the world. Well, basically what that would mean is that there may come a time when students begin to recognize that there is no joy in the world and they become disgusted with it. So they go through this phase of, oh, disgusted it is to find that there is no happiness in the world. But after they're disgusted with it and they relinquish it and throw it off, almost like, you know what it's like to pick your nose and you got a booger and you try to flick it and it doesn't work and you got to really sling it to get it off your finger. Well, that's the world. We have had the world all the way up to our elbows, and sometimes it takes a real slinging off to do it, and that slinging is done with that disgust. Be sure that it's really just disgust and not despair. That you know that once you get finished with that world, that there is something much better, and that is the boundless joy that you have once you're finished with the world. And in fact, in that regard, that's when people do begin to understand that monthly cycle, because now they're living much more Dhammarato, much more naturally. But you're beginning to touch into that already, and I would say that's excellent. Start watching those cycles. But in the process of watching those cycles, make sure that you're looking at them from the condition of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, the path factors, and what's actually going on there. To use that map constantly, because if you keep using that map constantly, one of the outcomes will be that right attitude that keeps popping back up to the top. I can do this. I can handle this crap. I am not in despair because of the mind itself. If anything, I'm disgusted with the effect that the world has had on my mind. And so we can come to that point of, at least in this moment, to remember it. Right now, I can experience that, boundless joy in this particular moment, to recognize that I can come out of my own crap. That's the first step of enlightenment. That's the first step of the path of Sotapan, is to say to yourself, no matter how messed up this mind is, no matter how obstructed it is, no matter how political it is in this moment, I can throw that stuff out. I can throw it out and be finished with it, be disgusted with it, throw it out and say, get out, I don't want you. I want to take a deep, happy, deep breath.
Actually, lately,
come back to this present moment. And actually, you're beginning to do that. I hear you.
Actually, lately, I have gotten a feeling that no matter what's going on and how shitty things around me is, it seems like there is a state, I can sense a state of peace just almost being available, no matter where I am, what I do.
That's that's part of the goal, is to become comfortable, to feel safe and secure. But everything really is okay. The only really messes that there are in the world are those that I help create. And when I stop making messes, I can sit in and say, boundless joy to find at last. I don't have to do that.
I think I know where to focus.
Okay, so let's review that, because this goes right back to the Eightfold Noble Path. And it's important to see that the Eightfold Noble Path, a most important quality of it is that it fits into these Four Noble Truths. And these Four Noble Truths, that second truth of what is the cause of suffering, is really the most important for the student to understand. It's my own fault. Everything. I'm completely 100% responsible for everything. And when we come to that point, about half of the doubt is eradicated, because most of the way that we look at the world is, gosh, this is such a mess, it's got to be somebody else's fault. Maybe a god or something did this mess. But when we come to that understanding through that second noble truth, that it's 100% our own mess, and that I'm 100% responsible for doing it, now I come face to face with the second part of that doubt. And that is, am I up to the task? Do I have the tools that I need? Can I develop the tools that I need so that I can take control of the life that I thought was somebody else's fault? So it's really like everybody's on the bus just sitting around and enjoying the ride while there's no driver there.
Yeah.
But we think that there's a self, we think there's a driver there, and we kind of wonder why the bus of our life is careening all over the place. And that's because there's nobody in charge. All you have is this motor called the reptilian brain that keeps pouring the power out, keeps pouring all the juice out, keeps spinning those wheels. And so we need to take that manut, that front part of the brain, that real human part of it, and say, wait a minute, we're going to be in charge now. And the most important quality of that charge is to take control of the breath. That's the first thing we take away from the reptilian brain, is the breathing. Because even though the reptilian brain has been designed for keeping the breath going, it does it in a very kind of overly conservative Republican way, so that everything is starved. And so when you take control of the breath, then you're going to take control of it with that frontal cortex, with the human front part of the brain. And we're going to take a really deep one. Oh, what boundless joy it is to take a really good deep breath and let out that sigh. Ah, and we just let it go. Be here now. This is the quality. And that, Ronnie, what I'm expecting you to do is every time that you recognize that you're in your monthly cycle, every point in time when you recognize that, say, okay, now is the point in time for me to take that deep breath, to become human again, to stop paying attention to or allowing the old algorithms to operate, and we're going to operate on a new algorithm. And that algorithm is right view, right sati, right action, right effort action, and right attitude. And we're going to practice those over and over again. That attitude is going to be, I can do this. No matter how obstructed the mind becomes, I can do this. I can throw that stuff out and take a deep, happy breath and be here now in this moment. And that's basically all there is to the entire practice of the Buddha.
Yeah, I think I have some work to do there. I have.
Okay.
But I have
Enjoy
begun.
it. That's the important point. Can you enjoy that work?
But I have begun seeing at least some of the seductiveness of anger, irritation on someone else's behalf. Something others have done that I don't think is right to me.
It's a very common thing in this language to say, he made me angry.
Yeah. But I have at least begun to see, to notice how seductive those feelings are. How easily they can just turn our whole attitude over to someone else instead of dealing with it ourselves.
Exactly so. But now that you're beginning to see that, oh no, everything is up to me. I can feel exactly the way that I want to. And that not only that, but the Buddha's given quite a list of things that are almost like a smorgasbord. They're not ideals. They're just right there in front of you, and you can choose them in order. And in fact, you can pick up a plate of every one of them and carry it away. And what are these things? One of them is satisfaction, to be feeling satisfied in the moment. that at least I can remember to come out of my crap. That's a satisfaction. That's a real win. To take a deep breath and to be happy in this moment is something that not a lot of people do. That's a very noble thing to do. So start being satisfied with that. To practice being satisfied, this is good enough. The next one would be with success. In fact, satisfaction and success work very closely together. That a moment ago, I was stuck in my crap. I was stuck in my dukkha. But now, I'm not. Now I'm successful. I could come out of that stuff. Yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay. I could come out of it. That's success. Congratulate the success. Hang on a second. My friend has just arrived. Hello? Good, good. I'm on a call right now. After the call is finished, I can come. I know. Well, you've gone down to the place where the 7-Eleven is, close to the Wat Po. You can get a song towel for 100 baht or so to get down to that area, and then you can walk. Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you. All right, good. Sorry about that. That's Toon. He lives at Wat Suan Mok, and he comes over here to visit from time to time. This is his third or fourth trip over here. So he already knows his way around the island. So what we were talking about was learning how to see the mental processes, to begin to wake up to what's going on in the mind. And there's several key points to begin to look for. One of the key points, in fact, possibly for the beginner or for the first few years of practice, the most important point is to become aware of what you're feeling just as those feelings arise. And that requires that sati, to remember, to keep watching what's going on. And every time those feelings arise, or in the case of what we normally talk about for the beginning student, every time that you remember that the mind has wandered away from the breath, take that as a success. In one case, it's, aha, I saw you, Mr. Mind, wandering away from the feelings, or wandering away from the breath. But in the next case, you can say, aha, I see you, feelings. I see you. I see that I have this feeling. There is an intention there, and under that intention is a wanting. And underneath that wanting is a feeling. And so this is why it's beginning to watch intentions throughout the day is a very, very good thing to do. And so early within the second or third talk, I will give students to begin to have sati practice throughout the day. That a lot of students think that, oh, meditation is all about sitting on the cushion all the time. We're in fact, oh no, we're going to take those very beginning skills that we're developing on the cushion and start to bring them into the day more and more often. Some students say, well, I started at 20 minutes and then I went to 30 and then 45 and then I'm up to an hour now. And I said, okay, an hour sitting of meditation means that you're not meditating and therefore you're still stuck in reptilian brain 23 hours a day. Is that the right way to practice? Or do we want to start interrupting that stuff as much as we can, as often as we can?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that, because outside of that 1 hour, you're just back at reinforcing the primitive brain.
Right, so we need to start doing that. And so one of the things that I used to do is to give students to use an application on their cell phone. But Robert pointed out to me that most of the younger people nowadays, see, I'm an old man, and that I said, well, I've got a cell phone, but I don't use it very much. And it just happened to be there. I happened to have made sure that it was turned on today because I expected him to call because he was telling me he was coming today. But it'll go a month or more, just sitting, battery dead, nothing to do with it. But nowadays, kids use, or young students, people all the time with the cell phone. For that reason, I was saying, okay, let's not put more dependency, more mental dependency on the cell phone. Let's do it in a more natural way. So the natural way that we're going to be doing this is with tools and techniques that we do throughout the day. One of the things that students regularly do is that they'll get up out of their chair. Some do it very infrequently. Sometimes they'll be out of their chair only 2 or 3 times in the morning. Other people can spend all morning long in the chair, but you don't spend all of your time in the chair. That many of the students say, well, I'm actually in the chair and then out of the chair about 30 times a day. Into the chair 30 times, out of the chair about 30 times. They say, great, now we've got 60 opportunities for sati. So the one about getting out of the chair is very, very handy in learning about feelings, because what you're going to do is, normally when people get out of the chair, they get out of the chair with an intention to go someplace and do something. That's the intention. And so when they get out of the chair, they get out of the chair in a posture of already walking. They don't go from sitting to standing to walking. They go from sitting to walking. Everyone does it. I don't know of anyone who doesn't do it otherwise, until we use it as a mindfulness training. And so what we're going to do is to start marking, to remember that whenever I stand up in a chair or stand up out of a chair, I'm not going to do so walking. I'm going to stand up and have the feet planted firmly on the ground so that I can take a deep breath and then ask myself the question, why am I getting up out of the chair? What is my intention? What do I want? And then you can ask yourself immediately under that, what was the feeling under that want? So that you begin to understand these feelings. But a lot of students say, you know, it was a great exercise, but the first few times I did it, I was actually 10 steps away from the chair before I remembered.
Yeah.
The answer to that is, okay, whenever it happens, stop and do it then. But a really diehard Dhamma practitioner, only 10 steps away, says, right, I caught that one. I'm going to do it right, though. And he goes back and he sits down in his chair. And then he gets up and he says, why am I getting up out of this chair? What was the original intention? What was the original feeling? Etc. like that. And you start practicing that and you'll be able to recognize, oh, I can do that. That is a visible thing that can teach you whether or not your sati is growing, is can you remember when you get out of a chair to stand up rather than get out of it walking. To stand and ask yourself the question, why? I was perfectly happy sitting in the chair. Why did I get up? What was it that drove me out of the chair? It was a comfortable, nice, beautiful chair. And here I am getting out of it.
Yeah, just a question. In an earlier session, you asked me to do this with the chairs and walking through doors and just look at the intentions.
Mm-hmm.
You now ask me to see what's before that.
Yes, what was it? What's the feeling?
What's the feeling giving rise to the intention?
Mm-hmm. So that question then is when we ask the question, why did I get out of the chair? We have to go a little bit deeper after that intention, rather than saying, oh, my intention was going to get a drink of water. No, underneath that feeling would have been a feeling of thirst. And so that was the main cause, was there was a feeling of not liking the fact that the throat felt dry. And that's what got us out of the chair. So you begin to start watching these intentions. The more you do this, the better you get at it, the quicker you'll begin to understand the nature of feelings and why you do the things that you do. So, when I gave you this before, have you been practicing it? How was your success at doing this, getting out of the chair and watching?
The first few days I forgot everything. not one recall. When I spoke to you last time, I managed to be, I don't know, 80-90% before actually doing things, and randomly getting wake up moments doing other things. But
that's exactly the point. You see, the more little wake up moments that we intentionally program, the more little wake up moments will happen throughout the day. And we're wanting that more and more, to start waking up out of the reptilian or out of the automatic system and come into this present moment. The real waking up will be, am I here now? If I am here now, I'm awake. And it's a really, really interesting game to stand when you get up.
Oh, yeah.
To remember that. It's actually okay for you to tell that to other people so that they'll watch you. And if you get up and not stand, they'll say, nah, 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 and you'll remember, okay, I'm going to remember this. This is the point of how to say strong determination. I am strongly determined that I'm not going to get out of a chair in the old way. I'm going to always get out of the chair and stand long enough to figure out for sure, why am I getting out of the chair?
that's clever. It's a clever
Not
trick.
it's not yeah, it's really clever, but it's not mine.
Clever nonetheless.
It is, but it's a very, very old trick.
But it works.
It's actually it's in the suttas. Another thing that we can begin to add is, what are you doing with your hands? Start watching your hands so that when you pick something up, you begin to pick it up slowly. You can actually open your hands like this, almost like the Dracula, he's going after the neck and he goes. Okay, so this is the kind of way that we want to do it. So whenever you pick up an object, when you go to pick it up, you stop and kind of hover over it or go slowly as you open your hands, and then as you close, notice the first contact, the very first contact. And then when you're holding it, feel the whole thing in your hand. Make a mental note of holding it. So you reached, you grasped, and then now you're holding. Whenever you set something down, you want to do that in reverse order to make sure that you're putting something down, not in a hurry. It's not like that you're opening the door with your keys and rushing to the toilet and you put your cell phone down, but you don't quite know sure where. No, when you set that cell phone down or the keys to the house down, you do it with great delicacy, with great flair, almost as if it was part of a stage play or a way a ballerina would do it. In other words, change your style into something that is beautiful, and then begin to practice that so that it matters even to the way that you begin to hold things.
So
this is good training practice for the mind.
So in short, kind of like focus on the doing instead of the idea of the doing.
Yes. In this case, with the hands, make sure that you're watching what they're doing.
Right. And also enjoy the sensation, right?
Yes, and enjoy the sensation, because we don't normally pay attention to the fact. Here's something quite interesting. Most mammals are covered with hair. It's only humans that have very little hair. And over the many, many millennia, what has happened is that the skin itself has become much, much more sensitive on the humans. Okay, and it has to do with the way that we groom ourselves. You see, monkeys and dogs, they can gnaw and chew and whatnot like that, but they're not really excellent at, for instance, getting ticks off. But a human has a tick, even crawling. We know that that animal is on the skin. It hasn't even launched in and started to bite yet. And if it does, it'll itch, and we know it. We've got those feelings all over the body. And yet a dog can be almost covered with ticks, and he's behaving not much differently. I mean, they scratch, but they'll scratch whether they've got ticks or not. But a human has a tick, and it's an emergency. All right. So now that we're really willing to recognize that the lack of the hair means that now the human brain has come out of its cranial shell and has literally covered most of the body. In fact, about the only place that we don't have really good sensitive touch is on the feet. But there's very practical reasons why that was true. It's because while we're out walking in the jungle, we don't want to have that kind of sensitivity. That we do want it in our fingers.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
All right. So
Yeah.
the whole body is covered with this sensational wrapping that is extraordinarily sensitive. And as young children, it's almost overwhelming to have so much sensual input. And so as little children, we tend to shut it down in the sense of not paying attention to it. There's just so much happening. It's all over the place. What we as Dhamma dudes, as meditators, we want to do is to start waking all that stuff back up again. To start experiencing what it's like to touch and to feel. Become very sensitive to the body. To enjoy the fact that we live in this marvelous thing. I mean, it is the height of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And so we begin to appreciate the human body, and by doing so, we also recognize that I too can go to the height of humanity. I too can get my act together. If I can, in fact, get the crap out of my mind occasionally, then I can keep it out and get to the point to where I'm crap free and live my life that way over and over and over again as often as I can. So that it becomes almost its own kind of habit.
Right.
And so we become free. And by being free, we become really what we would call noble. The Buddha used the word Arya, and we know what Hitler did with that word.
Oh,
but
God.
the Buddha did exactly the opposite with the word Aryan. And talked about it in the sense of someone who is very high quality, high class, not because of the way that they were born, but because of the way they live their lives, the way they act.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we mean by the word samadhi also, is the peak or the pinnacle. It's like an American Indian teepee that has all the ridge folds coming up to the top. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of raise our mental state out of a state of it's his fault, out of the state of I can do, into the state of this is really marvelous. This is good stuff. I am completely satisfied with this.
Gotcha.
So it comes to satisfaction, security, safety, and success. and with that generates wealth. And that's what Willy and I have been working with for quite a long time, is his feeling of wealth.
Right.
He
Gotcha.
feels extraordinarily wealthy because he's generous, intentionally generous.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, so I think, yeah, this is probably like a good stopping point for me because it's like 3:15 here, so I have to go shower.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you about something else, but call me again when you have time, okay?
Okay. Bye, guys. Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
See you.
Bye-bye.
This is actually probably a pretty good time to finish, unless you've got more questions about what we've been talking about.
No questions. I'll have mostly practice points now.
All right, go practice. Enjoy your practice.
Enjoy your day. See you next time.
See you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.